Welcome to the Inside Tech podcast. Today we are talking about electric boats and we have a guest from Evoy. Welcome, Leif.
Thank you very much.
All right, maybe you can tell a little bit about yourself and your background to start with so that our guests get to know you.
Yeah, for sure. In Norwegian, grown up in Norway, born in Canada, but moved here when I was 4. Grew up on an island, so I've always been close to the ocean, and that led me into a maritime career. And I've done all the steps from washing toilets and washing decks, and in the end I was a sea captain sailing on tankers here in Europe and around the world. Then I decided to go ashore when our first daughter was born, and worked in the oil service industry as a COO and a CEO. I decided to do something else, and then we started Evoy.
Yeah, you're making the electric boats, and it's quite interesting area of when we are talking about the e-mobility.
Yeah, for sure. So in Evoy, we make the electric powertrains that you can put into any boat to make them electric. So you don't build the boats themselves, but we build like the electric motor system, so to speak, that is high output. So typically our motors are from 120 to 400 horsepower, meaning that fits in boats from, like, you could say 20 feet and up to 50, 60 feet. And as we have quite a bit of punch and horsepower, we can also make them go quite fast. So that's our main focus and industry today.
So globally, the market for electric boat hit the $5.1 billion in 2022. And Europe is leading the charge, taking up about 35% of the total market as per data from market research company. Mm-hmm. So the global market is set for an impressive growth, projected to double the value to hit more than $10 billion by 2030. So it's clear that the electric boat market is on the rise and it shows no sign of slowing down. Countries in Northern Europe, such as Norway, are leading this trend with the highest levels of both supply of electric boats and also growing interest in their adoption.
Yeah, that sounds about correct.
Yeah, but how did they actually end up to starting the Evoy back in the time? When did Evoy start and how you ended up to go there? Your background is in the maritime, but it's still a jump to do something different.
Yeah, for sure. So as a part of my training to become a sailor, I actually had to do 1 year of electrical training. So that's where I speared my interest back then. And of course, like boating and leisure boating has always been my main hobby. I think I've owned around, it's 15 boats or so through my life. Always had a boat or two, and this interest kind of merged at some point. My father is an entrepreneur, an inventor, and we've always shared interest for the ocean. And we had this time, I think it was mid-2000s, we were having one of our whiskey workshop nights, and we were sitting and drawing on napkins, basically a boat that we wanted to design. And to achieve the goals that we had for the hulls, we wanted to make it electric, and we started looking in the market what was available. And it struck me at that point that there was no off-the-shelf systems out there with high output. And yeah, we just started following the market, and we came all the way to 2018, and to our surprise at that point, still nobody really had grabbed this high output opportunity that we, from our point of view, seemed quite obvious to come. So yeah, I jumped off a career as a CEO of a larger company in my hometown, and we started Evoy, and we thought, like, how hard can it be? And it turned out to be pretty hard, but we're still around, still here.
Yeah, you started 2018 and you are still around. How is Evoy doing at the moment?
Yeah, so I think we're in a healthy place. We're around 50 employees now. We have sales to 20 countries, and we see a growing interest for going electric. And of course, by showcasing a lot of boats on the water with our systems, that's bringing us a lot of what should I say, interesting leads coming in from all over the world.
And what about your area of operation? So we know that you are based in Norway. So are your customers only in Norway, or are you expanding in other areas also?
Yeah, so I would say Europe is our main focus point right now. That's where we have most of our sales and follow-ups. We've also done sales in Asia, Northern America, but we see that when we look at, as an example, look at a traffic on our websites, half of our traffic is from the US. And also when we talk to a lot of Americans, there's definitely a lot of interest there, especially on the lakes. So US is going to be an interesting and important market for us going forward. However, not to forget, most of our customers until now has been commercial customers. So like fish farming, tourists, ports and harbor, power companies, and so on. And I think that's still going to be kind of our bread and butter for the next few years, while the recreational and leisure boat market is warming up.
All right. So yeah, you said that that's not as easy or road today with Evoy when you started as you thought. What kind of challenges there has been on the way?
Yeah, and anyone that's been an entrepreneur or started a company knows that there's multiple and uncountable numbers of challenges popping up along the road. But to summarize, I think it's evolved around three main topics along the road. There's the technology, making everything work as you want it to work. There's always snags and things you haven't thought about, and suppliers that's not delivering as they're supposed to, and so on. And then secondly, I would say there is recruitment and competence. It's always, anyone that has recruited a bit of people know that you will always miss sometimes, even with the best of knowledge, the best of intentions. It's easy to miss. And then of course the last few years it's been a bit challenging because there has been low unemployment rates in Europe and North America, meaning it's also been a challenge to get a hold of the right competence, but we've managed. And then lastly, but not least, capital and capital access is critical in a startup company like Evoy. There's a period there where you will have working hard to get to profitability. In the meantime, you need help from good investors to excel the company going forward.
I'm thinking also the other thing, like the electric boats are a little bit, let's say, not as generally adapted yet as the electric vehicles start to be. So how is the charging infrastructure? Is that slowing you down? And how actually electric boats, where are they charged? Is there charging infrastructure already in the place?
Yeah, so of course, charging is important. Actually, since most of our customer base are commercial, they're not as dependent on having like a charging network along a coast or along, because they quite often invest in their own infrastructure. And most of the commercial customers that we have are so-called A2A customers. So they go out and they do something, they visit their fish bins or whatever, and then they come back to the same place every day. So it means that they just charge where they overnight. However, to open up the recreational market to a larger extent, so that they can go on longer boat trips, the infrastructure is also going to be important. We have partners today, as an example, in Plug, that's a Norwegian company, and also Aqua Super Power from the UK that's working with building these infrastructures today. So there is definitely coming a lot of infrastructure. The Mediterranean now is pretty well covered. A lot of the lakes in Europe is getting superchargers. The Norwegian coast and the Swedish coast is coming along. Next year, you'll probably be able to supercharged between two of the largest cities in Norway, and more of them on their way in. So but for us, I don't actually feel like the infrastructure is a huge barrier today. But it's important to keep up the pace on that side as well, just to bring down the comfort or make it more comfortable for those recreational boaters that's considering to go electric.
Yeah, that brings me to a question which is probably very difficult to answer, as boats are very different. But how long the boats typically can operate with one charge before they need to charge, and how large batteries they have, how long the charging itself takes then?
Yeah, like you said, boats are very different. There's around, it's hard to find numbers, but it looks like there's around 5,000 boat builders in the world. As a rule of thumb, if you have a normal plastic boat, nothing, or aluminium boat, nothing special done to it, a typical V-hull shape hull, with the battery technology that's available today, you typically have 1.5 hour in plain hull speed, meaning that that's your like 50, 60 kilometers type of range. Then, of course, we have clients and we have customers that do various things to increase range, low weight, semi-foil, full foil, air-induced hulls, where we see them make that 2 hour range mark. And I think that's kind of like the holy grail when most boats get closer to 2 hours. I think the adoption rate is going to increase quite quickly and quite fast. And of course, the batteries are steadily increasing and improving over time here. So it's definitely coming in that direction. And the same as with electric cars. If you look 10 years back, then there were so many naysayers and a lot of non-believers in electric cars, and you don't find a lot of them left today. So it's only going to go one way.
About the batteries, are they same as the used in the EV?
So there's been, since we started almost 6 years ago, it's been an incredible development seen from our point of view. So when we started, you had to use quite specialized batteries that had high discharge and charge rates, but they were heavy and expensive. But what we've seen now, the latest year or two, is that there is a few battery packers and a few battery producers out there that has managed to merge these technologies. So now you can get both low weight and high energy density mixed with fairly high discharge rate and charge rates. So it means that the merging of these technologies is falling into the lap of the boating industry, and also meaning that the direction of the battery development is definitely going to help the adaptation of electric boats going forward. So we're kind of at the tipping point now where batteries definitely are also making sense for electric boats. And the thing that's to your question is that electric boats going forward now to a larger degree can use same type of batteries that has been used traditionally only in the electric car industry, and that will bring down cost and also increase range in the next few years.
All right. Yeah, and then you mentioned like it was like 10 years ago there was a lot of people were, as you said, naysayers for the electric vehicles. How is for the electric boats? How is the kind of your market at the moment? Is there a lot of still the naysayers and those who don't believe it will work, or is it already in the more of the acceptance side?
So I don't know. I would say people are as a group are kind of predictable in the way that they always fear the unknown. So I think electric boating needs to go through the same kind of loops that electric cars have. You need to build trust around the companies. You need to build trust around the technology, and you will always have early adapters that's ready to try things at an earlier time point and find that interesting and cool. So I think electric boating, as the same as electric cars, is going through the same type of S-curve. The positive thing is that we see a lot of interest from those that are heavily into the EV world already. They're maybe on their second or third electric car. They have solar panel on the roofs. They have electric lawnmowers, electric bikes. The only thing that they don't have electric is their boats. So we see definitely heavy interest from those type of customers, and they'll probably be our first customers as well.
Still related to this, the non-believers, at least in electric car, people tend to have this worry about the range anxiety. And then people tend to make the comparison between electric car and then the internal combustion car, especially in the range. So like electric car nowadays, it can go up to 500 kilometers, while the traditional ICE cars, it can go to more than 1,000 kilometers. Can you say like similar kind of comparison between electric boat and the traditional boat in terms of range?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot happening in the EV space. We have Chinese electric cars now passing that 1,000-kilometer barrier. And some electric or gasoline cars don't do more than 700-800. So we actually do have electric cars now with longer range than some of the internal combustion engines on the market. So there's definitely a move in that direction where these things are maturing. I think also a lot of customers, so Norway have the highest electric car adoption in the world. 80 to 90% of the sales in Norway are electric. And we have learned a lot in this process, which maybe some other countries need to learn still. One thing is that once you hit that 500, 600 kilometer range, it's good enough for most. So I think you don't need necessarily to see that 1,000-kilometer range for the huge adoption to come along. There's a reason why Tesla hasn't chosen to build bigger and bigger and bigger battery. They've found kind of a sweet spot where they know as long as the infrastructure is in place that the range is sufficient. And now it's more of a game to get the prices down and get the weight down, but try to keep the kilowatt hours and the battery size that's in the cars. And I believe we'll see the same in the boating side. We need to find our sweet spot for battery size. I believe it's a bit larger than on the car side. The car side seems to have stabilized between 70 and 80 kilowatt hours. I think my guess will be that batteries will for boats will stabilize somewhere between 100 and 120 kilowatt hours. And with that will cover the range of what most people need. So yeah, no, there's a lot of things happening there, but I'm not the believer that range is the only deciding factor for the adaptation of electrification mobility. It's more a trust thing that needs to be built over time, and the only thing that really helps is time.
So now let's talk about the competitive landscape. So we know that this electric boat industry is new and an emerging market. So how do you view this current competitive landscape in this new but very dynamic industry? And who do you consider as Evoy's main competitors?
So it's an interesting landscape. When we started in 2018, there was not really anyone that you could point to as competitor. So I think for all future, we can always call ourselves the global first mover in high output. There's a lot of them that have been working on the low output side for many years, but on the high output space, we're definitely the global first mover. When it comes to the competitor space, what's been really interesting to see is that there's been so many startup companies coming into this space the last few years. I think quite a few of them see that there's a large opportunity to be had in this electrification space. So But we are really the only one in our space that has started to deliver to customers at the high pace. So in that respect, we don't really have any direct competitors per se, but we do see there's a lot of other startup companies moving into the space now. So it's really interesting to see how they evolve, and it's important for us as well, because if Evoy was the only company in this space, I think it would be a sign that Evoy was too early to the market, actually. So I'm glad to see that there's a lot of potential competition coming to the market, because there's going to be a large enough market for all of us.
Yeah, Tampa rule, if you don't see competition, you are either not noticing it or you are in a too early or in a wrong business.
Exactly. So we're actually really glad to see these up and coming companies, and a few of them are also, from what we hear, starting to deliver to customers now come springtime. So that's great.
About technology wise, if we look forward, of course we look the battery technology developing. Is there some specific technological developments you are looking forward in the near future, in the year or two, regarding the electric boats?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that comes to mind. Of course, we've touched a bit on the battery side already. Then the continuous development of a battery development is going to be very, very important. I think it's not going to be one technology wins it all, and we'll see a breaking point where batteries suddenly get a lot better. Based on the 150 different battery suppliers that we have had dialogue with, we've learned that the battery market is actually getting quite mature. You can maybe compare it to cell phones or computers or iPads or whatnot. And what they do now is that they have a lot better batteries in their labs, but they only release gradually. And the reason for that, they tell me, is that even though many of these companies are quite large, they are also dependent on getting cash in every month, keeping an eye on their liquidity. So they drop a little bit and a little bit and a little bit better batteries as we move on, and they work hard on the pricing side. So batteries is one thing that we keep a close eye on. Secondly, I would say there's so much interesting going on around vehicle to grid, vehicle to load, vehicle to house, and we of course call it a vessel instead of a vehicle. So I think this space is super interesting. As an example, we will be showcasing vehicle to grid very soon, and show that we can technically do it. And from that point, it's almost just your imagination that sets limits. As an example, you can have your electric boat stored next to your house in the wintertime, and it can work as peak shaving, smart charging, and it could also potentially take down energy when it's cheap and put it back into the grid when it's expensive, and actually then earn money for you. So and there's actually companies out there that's willing to pay for the service, and they're also willing to offset some of the cost for the batteries to have your batteries available to use to balance their grid. So this is going to be a super interesting space to see how it evolves in the next coming years.
All right. How about like in industry-wide, is there some kind of trends you see now currently or forming for the coming year for electric boat industry?
Yeah, so we have dialogue with 300 and something boat builders around the world, and I would say there's one clear trend that we see, and that is that many of them are working on boats to become more efficient. Not just because of electrification, but also because energy prices in general has increased significantly in later years. So it's a big barrier for a lot of the boat buyers that gasoline and diesel has become so as expensive as it is. So by making more efficient boat hulls, either by reducing weight or putting on foils or semi-foils and that type of things, they can significantly reduce the energy consumption of the boat. And what that means, again, is that it would make it possible for electric boats to go a lot further, because when the energy consumption goes down on a standard diesel or gasoline, it also means that the energy consumption on electric goes down and the range increases. So it's all together a very, very positive trend for electric boating.
Then I have a last question from me, is that we discussed in an earlier episode about batteries versus hydrogen, and there pretty much the conclusion was that probably for the electric vehicles, personal cars, it's not going to be the technology because of cost and other challenges there, but for the heavier vehicles, it might be the future solution, also the hydrogen. How do you see that in the maritime industry in general? Will the boats have potential to utilize hydrogen instead of batteries? Or will it be bigger ships then, which might potentially benefit from that?
Look, if you're building a hydrogen boat, then you need 100% of the Evoy system. So we are a bit technology agnostic on that side. We can connect to range extenders being gasoline, diesel, biofuel, hydrogen or ammonia. It doesn't really matter. But the thing is, to make a boat go through the water, you still need 100% of the Evoy system. So we're well positioned to adapt to whatever comes as the energy bearer in the future. With that said, hydrogen has some really large obstacles to overcome. You mentioned infrastructure before. On the hydrogen side, it's kind of a nightmare to have that in place. So I think hydrogen in small boats and small vessels is going to have a pretty steep uphill in front of them. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I think at the time, at the rate that things are improving in the hydrogen space, at the same time in the next 5 to 10 years, the batteries will improve so much that it will displace a lot of what you think of as natural for hydrogen to move into today. So, but when we talk a bit larger vessels, as an example, Evoy can do vessels up to 24 meters. And if you look at the larger vessels there, like typically from 15 meters and up, there definitely could be a space for hydrogen as range extenders for some of these vessels. So I do believe that ammonia and hydrogen probably do has a space in this market, but in recreational boating, I don't believe hydrogen will be a winner.
Yeah, so pretty much similar views as we had with other expert on the road traffic area, that there is plenty of challenges for hydrogen, but it might be in certain cases in the future, yes.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page when it comes to that. So, but for us, as I mentioned, if there should come a certain surge towards that in certain regions, like we know, as an example, Japan is very hydrogen proactive. So for us, there can be pockets and markets where this is going to be a part of our product, so to speak.
So I have also one last question for you. What is the next step for Evoy? What is your vision for Evoy in the future?
Yeah, so for Evoy, we're now moved from being a startup to be a growth company. And then you think that you've had a hard time the last 5 years looking back, and there's been a lot of bumps. But from what I understand and learn and talk to other entrepreneurs, it's now that it really is getting hard. So, but I think for our point of view, keeping our eyes open and acknowledging that the next few years is going to be a lot of fun, but also challenging, is important. But I think with the partners that we bring on board, stakeholders, suppliers, investors, customers, we're definitely in a space where we can see that this is going to be something huge. Electric boating is the next natural space where we will see electric mobility. Electric cars are getting mature, bikes, you name it. We see even planes now that will be in market in not very many years. And boating has a natural place in there. We used to say everything that can be electrified will be electrified, and boats the same.
Okay, this has been a very good overview, this discussion on the e-mobility on the water, and have to follow how the Evoy is going. It seems that you guys are positioned well for the future and probably entering the market in the right time, as we see from all the signs what are happening. And battery technology, of course, here is also in the important role for the future, how it develops. And it seems that battery technology is developing very fast, and prices there are also going down year by year. And thank you coming today to our podcast, Leif.
It was my pleasure. I wish you a happy holiday and have a nice day.
Happy holiday to you too.
A special offer for our listeners. We are giving you full access to statistics for 30 days by registering at statson.com with the code STATSON, spelled in uppercase STATZON. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Visit our website and get our Text 360 newsletters. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe, recommend the podcast to your colleagues, friends, and family, and follow us on social media.